Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty small. I only do, I guess I could do up to 200 pounds a week, but I don't currently grow my maximum amount. Um, I grow somewhere around 50 to 100, depending on what's going on, markets, um, restaurants, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a pretty small operation. It's all in my garage. I have a 3.5 car garage that we bought this house specifically because it was a little bit of a bigger garage. We like the house too, but we ended up saying, okay, well, this is a good sized garage. We can probably make this work. I ended up in 2019 graduating from A&M, and so Texas A&M. I don't know if you guys know what that university is, but they are a big agricultural university, right? And they also do animal science, engineering, that kind of thing. But it's all big ag. And I specifically went there because I wanted to do something called market gardening. And that is a very intensive process of gardening or farming in a small plot with a very high valuable, like crop like strawberries or something like that. And so the goal was for me to graduate with a degree in horticulture, which I did. But then I was going to, start doing that. Well, my last year that I was in school, I started to really follow some guys on YouTube that inspired me from the very beginning to kind of do this idea that I had with market gardening. One of them, his name is Jean-Martin Fortier, JM Fortier. And then the other one, Curtis Stone. So Curtis Stone, he is a guy that, I followed on YouTube. He has a pretty big YouTube following. And I followed him for almost, I think it was like 2 or 3 years. And the last year I was in school, brought this guy on his channel, and he was a mushroom grower. And he introduced himself and said, hey, just to kind of grow my channel and help things along, we're going to run a little giveaway. And that giveaway was kind of like a lottery where you buy one of his t-shirts and you could potentially win an all expenses paid trip to Canada. Well, I bought a t-shirt and I won, which is completely insane. I've never won anything. And I don't know how many people entered it, but it was a lot. And I did have to pay for the plane ticket, but that was it. The rest of it was taken care of while I was there. And this is in British Columbia. So I spent 10 days up there in BC in this place called Summerland. And it's just north of Idaho. And it was a really, really cool experience. I got to meet both of them. And this guy's name is Brian Callow. And he's a well-known, very large scale mushroom grower up there in British Columbia, and much bigger operation than I have. Anyway, so I was very surprised, to say the least. And then I was also excited to learn. And when I got up there, I got incredibly inspired. And I just thought, okay, so let's just do a 180 on my original plan and start the plan of maybe I can do this mushroom thing. Some of the things that you're trying to mimic is really high humidity that would happen right after a rain, right? Okay. And so in nature, mushrooms, they are always there. You just don't know it. They hide with the mycelium until the perfect environment for them to reproduce, which is what the mushroom is. And so I am trying to mimic that environment, which is extremely high humidity, between 80 to 90% humidity all the time. And low temperature. They like really cold. Most mushrooms, there's some species that do well in warm weather, but for the most part, everything likes it with between like 50 and 60, maybe 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's kind of difficult to mimic these, just to say the least. You have to use a dedicated air system, and then you have to use a dedicated humidification system. And so the challenges can be pretty high. The mushrooms also kind of do what they want. You can't really make them do what you want. You have to kind of roll with the way they're reacting. And you're always battling something that wants to also eat your mushrooms besides you, right? So there are lots of pathogens out there that like to munch on mushrooms. So I'm constantly battling those as well. But yeah, it's just mimicking a perfect environment and keeping that and maintaining that. So without your system and at 50% humidity, the mushrooms really won't grow. Like they just stop. They will a little bit. They'll kind of, sit there and they're just kind of in limbo. They're waiting, right?
Yeah.
Or if time, like just, it only takes maybe a day, they'll stop growing. They'll start to crack. They'll start to shrivel up and they'll die. They'll just go away. And that happens very quickly. And that's in a day. Like in one day, you'll lose your crop, right? That'll be gone. So it was a big deal here. So some of the species that I grow take 3.5 months from the time I inoculate the grow bag to the time I can harvest is 3.5 months for like my Taki. That's crazy. Yeah. So I would have lost that crop, 3.5 months worth of time in essence for that one particular crop. And I don't grow those every single day, every week. That would have been devastating to the. Yeah. So I'd say both of them are equal because the temperature, for instance, right, will affect humidity. And it's all depending on how cold or warm the temperature is, dictates how much moisture you can actually put into the air, right? So there's only so much capacity within a temperature range for humidity. So higher humidity typically raises the temperature, right? And so I'm constantly moving air in there. And that means that I'm cycling the supply of fresh air and then pulling out, in essence, the stale air that's in there. And in order to maintain that humidity level and then the quality of the humidity level is really, really important. And the only way that I've been able to find to do that, there's two main ways that I've found. And one of them is the ultrasonic route, which is almost like a cloud that moves around. And then y'all's product, which obviously does a great job at maintaining the quality and consistency. The challenge that I would say that I'm always running into is because of the high air exchange rate, right, which I can control. All these things, all the variables are all manipulated in a way electronically and automatically, right? And I've completely built the system, custom built the system myself. And so what happens is y'all's system will turn on, right? And it has a supply of air from an air compressor. That air compressor has a small tank on it, as small of a tank as I could get in a commercial style unit, right? And the reason for that is because as soon as the power is shut off to the air compressor, right, that tank is continuing to push, moisture for a certain amount until the PSI drops. It continues to push that into the room. Well, I don't want to go too high. Like I don't want 99% humidity, right? And I don't want 80% humidity. I want kind of in between that all the time. And so what I've done is I've calculated how long it takes for the system to run out of air, right, at a certain PSI in order to keep it in that range. And so my system automatically shuts off or turns on depending on that range. And I typically stay pretty close to that range, unless something's wrong, or something happens, and then I have alarms, I have things that tell me, hey, something's wrong. The quality is really important, because if it's too wet, right? For instance, there are other types of misting systems out there that are more of a wet droplet, right? Yeah. And that is problematic. And so in nature, one of the things that happens is you have rain, obviously, that creates the humidity, or it's just high humidity just in general, especially down here in like Texas, where we have crazy humidity all the time. The high humidity is fine, but if it's a wet humidity and it actually touches the mushrooms, right, and falls down on the mushrooms, that's a perfect breeding ground for those pathogens that I was talking about that I'm constantly battling. And that creates kind of a frustration for me. You can't really, and plus being in an enclosed indoor environment, you don't want it really, really wet and soaking all the time, because it also causes issues in whatever you're growing things in. My room that I built, this grow room, is 100% waterproof. Like, I don't have to worry about it, doing something, going somewhere where it's not supposed to. I've designed it a specific way so that it's constantly able to be wet. But because y'all have such a fine mist, right? It's this incredibly small micron, and it's consistent. It's made it so that I have not found a better way to humidify mushrooms, right? Everybody I know that humidifies for mushrooms either uses ultrasonics or they use misting fans. That's the two options. I don't see anybody using what you guys have. And that's a huge game changer for me. Until I had y'all's product, I was constantly battling issues with the ultrasonics. The ultrasonics, they're great and all, but they're hard to control. And then the problem is that it's not an enclosed unit, right? So you have a bath, like a big water bath, and this unit sits inside of it, and it just vibrates at a certain frequency and causes the water to evaporate and atomize. And then you have this almost like you guys have seen dry ice, right? And you put it in water. It's the same concept. It's not quite as pronounced as that, but it's a cloud in essence. And that is definitely a larger drop size as well. The droplet size is, big enough to cause moisture to build up on the mushrooms themselves, and anything that it touches will become quite wet and then drip. Anytime you have just standing water, right? And you have to have a constant flow of water. So that's the thing too. So the way these systems have been built out in the past, and what I did it based off of what all the other mushroom growers are using, is they have a water supply coming into something like a tote. Like, so take, for instance, like a Rubbermaid tote, right? That's got a rating on it that allows you to use it for food, right? I make sure everything that I use is food grade and has the correct certifications and stuff. And so you have this tote, it's full of the water. It's probably got, 10 gallons in it or something like that. You have this big, huge disc, this metal disc that has all the ultrasonic discs on it. It's very heavy, and that sits and then floats just on the top of the water. And then inside, what would happen is within, I'd say, not even a week, you would start to see growth in that, right? In the tub. And that water, once it's contaminated, you're atomizing it, and then just contributing to the contamination in the room. So it was a constant battle. Made contamination much, much worse, and was a very frustrating experience to use. And then the constant water supply would work off of a float switch. So the float switch shuts off once it rises to a certain level, And then as it lowers, it would kick back on and it would rise back up. So I would have constant water supply in there, which is good. But things can get messed up. Float switches can fail. You can have issues where, obviously, like I was saying, things start to get messed up in there. The discs can break. You have to replace the disc when that happens. They're very, very expensive typically to get a multiple disc unit. So it can be expensive to replace it. I actually went through 2 full units before I finally found y'all. So I spent probably twice as much on that system as I did on y'all's, and including all of the things that would go wrong, all the customizing. You have to direct the mist a certain way because it's just bubbling up, right? So there's no way to steer it, you know, in a way that would make it easy. So what I was using was like 4-inch PVC pipe, and I would shape it the way that I wanted it to go, the direction I wanted it to go, and then I'd have a fan, right, that would blow it out of the tub in through that and push it out. Well, then you have electronics that are in the water. You have the fan itself that starts to break down. I went through lots of fans, and they were waterproof rated fans, so you know, it doesn't matter. The complication was high versus y'all's is plug and play. Like you're hooking up 2 things. You're hooking up water and you're hooking up air, and it's incredibly easy to use. It was a game changer for me. It made all the difference in the world. It's been fantastic. The thing is pretty much a tank. My water is extremely filtered. And so I have 600 gallons of on-site water inside my garage. There's 2 300-gallon tanks constantly being filled from the RO system, depending on usage. I use that for everything. So the mushrooms are being exposed to that perfect water because it's rain. Rain doesn't have any minerals in it at all. So it is slightly acidic. And that's okay. That's totally fine for plants and fungus and all of that. And it's preferred. It's actually preferred by plants because it allows them to uptake nutrients that they maybe couldn't in an alkaline setting. So the rain, when it falls down into the root area, it allows the uptake of nutrients because it's going to leach those naturally into the water. And then as it's uptake, you know, from the plant, it gets those minerals. So that's all. That's been that way for a long time, obviously, and that is what prevents me from having issues with anything. And the mushrooms actually love it. So it's another way of mimicking Mother Nature, right? But yeah, the water is absolutely pure. Just to give you an idea, so mushrooms can pop up overnight, right? It's an incredibly fast growing thing, and that's important because the rain doesn't last forever. The high humidity doesn't last forever, so they got to use that moisture quickly to grow. So I had the system connected yesterday, right? Yeah. Last night, my mushrooms doubled in size. As soon as I hooked up y'all's system, they doubled. So I got an immediate response. It wasn't like, you know, hoping that this, you know, getting back online where I needed to be and the system. I knew I was having issues with the system before I ever even contacted y'all, right? And I was trying to fix it. I was trying to make it work, and it was affecting the mushrooms, right? But when it's working the way that it is now, the mushrooms love it. They absolutely love it. And they responded immediately in a very positive way. Yeah, I like I said, y'all's is a game changer. It's in my opinion, there's no better way to grow mushrooms in an enclosed space. This system for any gourmet mushroom, you know, like oyster, lion's mane, you know, all the names that you hear, those are affected in extremely positive ways with this system, and I prevent a lot of the issues that I had with the ultrasonics. And then I definitely am not using the system that I actually learned on, which is the fans that have a mister built into them. It's in essence a very crude way to get a whole lot of moisture into an area. It's extremely wet and can lead to some problems. I think it would be beneficial for anything that requires a high level of humidity, right? So if there's like a greenhouse with like tropical plants or something like that, yeah, this system would be killer in that. The things that people are going to notice with the system is that air compressor is going to be running a lot. There are drawbacks to having an air compressor requirement, right? That can also be a little intimidating for people because they might burn up an air compressor pretty quick. They do make commercial style air compressors for like 150 to 300 bucks, depending on where you get them from. I got mine from Amazon. Mine's a little bit fancier. It was a California Air Tools. I forget the model number. I want to say it's like 450 bucks. But you don't have to get that, but that's designed to be run constantly. And it has a release valve on it that will release automatically all on its own. So I would absolutely tell somebody, hey, make sure to get extra tips for the nozzle or get an extra nozzle, and that'll keep you running even if something goes down with the system for whatever reason, for maintenance wise. Buy now, cry now, and be very happy later. I mean, it's not even like yeah, it might be a little more expensive than your Costco special for humidifier that you put in there for trying to make things work that only costs like 50 bucks. But changing the water, right? Cleaning the system, replacing the water constantly, dealing with all of the headache that comes with the ultrasonic systems. Like, that's what everybody uses. And in my opinion, it's a huge waste of time and money and inconsistencies, and leading to so many other frustrations like contamination. Contamination is the number one problem every mushroom grower has. Obviously, cost is always something that people have to put into consideration, but this system, in the big picture, like system-wise, is actually less expensive. You don't need anything special.